Welcome to today's Thought for the Day at St Peter's. I'm Paul Hardingham, the vicar here, and I want to reflect with you on the next section of Luke's Gospel, which we're looking at today. You'll find the passage in Luke chapter 6, verses 26 to 56. This week we're looking at this chapter of Luke through the lens of the disciples' situation immediately following Jesus' resurrection. In John's Gospel, we're told that the disciples were gathered together behind locked doors for fear of the Jews. As it was the Jewish leaders who had authorised Jesus' death, the disciples must have felt real anger and hatred alongside their fear. In this mix of emotions, remembering Jesus' words would have been powerful to them. As he says in this passage, "But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who ill-treat you." So what's Jesus saying here? He's calling his followers to a whole new way of living, one in which character determines how we behave. So how do we respond to our enemies? Thinking about those people who are really difficult in our lives, the ones we find impatient, judgmental, self-righteous, or just plain disagreeable. Our attitudes will be very different from the values of those around us, often including our family and friends too. Rather than pursuing a path of retaliation and revenge, we will want to exhibit love and acceptance of others. It means giving them the best that we have and seeking to bless them in every way. As the passage says, being willing to go the extra mile. I'm reminded of the story of a young army recruit. In his barracks, he was constantly ridiculed by the other recruits for being a Christian. Each night, before going to sleep, he would openly read his Bible and pray on his bed. One night, the others decided to act. They ripped up the Bible, trashed his belongings. However, the next morning, to their surprise, they found that he had cleaned all the boots of the recruits in the barracks. It marked a turning point in his relationship with them, and it was the result of his desire to bless them, even though they didn't deserve it. Now, this isn't an easy path as we try and apply this in our own lives. It's only possible to love our enemies in this way as we follow the example of Jesus himself. When he was being crucified, as Luke says, Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." When we start loving our enemies, we become more like him. This is how Jesus lived. He willingly laid down his life for us and gave us the power to love our enemies as he does. So he calls us to selfless and self-giving love. So what does this mean for us in a time of lockdown? Well, I think on the one hand, it says, be it that we have to be vulnerable in our relationships with Jesus and others. That isn't always easy, is it? But in love, we're called to be open and honest with others, not easily hurt by their words and actions. I know that can be a challenge. The trouble is, you see, fear can easily cause us to become self-centred, and Jesus is saying that that's what we should resist. On the other hand, we're called to be generous with others, thinking about our possessions, our time and our money. In this passage, Jesus reminds us, "Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you." Again, it's fear that causes us to be selfish. And in a society at the moment where there are so many needs, so many people who are going through deep suffering, the opportunities of generosity abound. So how do we make this practical and real? Well, Jesus says, pray. Pray for those who ill-treat you. It was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German pastor executed by the Nazis at the end of World War II, who wrote this. "This is the supreme demand. Through the medium of prayer, we go out to our enemy, stand by his side, and plead for him to God. For if we pray for them, we are taking their distress and poverty and guilt on ourselves and pleading to God for them."